Hey Dude,
The 90s Called,
with Christine Taylor and David Lascher.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hey Dude, The 90s Called podcast. I'm David.
Hi David, I'm Christine, your co-host.
Christine.
Nice to see you.
Your lighting is very soft, brush light. Mine is like, I have this ring light that's just shining on my face. I got to get new lighting.
Well, the lighting that I have is also like, there's a big sliding glass door in front of me too. So I have full sunlight. Like I have natural sunlight.
Yeah, my windows and doors are all behind
You're on the
me.
side. I know, but you have a much better background than I have. So that's much more like Ben has even said it. Ben's like, David's background is so much cooler than your, like I'm just sitting on a desk with a wall behind me, but I've got really good lighting.
Beautiful. I mean, I look very hard.
You look good.
Tell Ben that firewood, by the way, has never been used. I have never lit a fire.
No, it's But yeah,
anyway.
You've got a good like depth of field. Is that what it's called? Depth of field?
You know what? On all of my, many of my Zooms, people do comment on my background. Like, is that real or is that a filter?
Were you ever involved in that like peak of the pandemic when people were rating people's backgrounds on Zoom? Do you remember? Like that was a thing.
No.
Like they would look at, celebrities. Like there were so many interviews happening on Zoom for TV shows and things like that. And
everything.
there were ratings of celebrities' backgrounds.
Oh no.
On Zoom.
I remember people would like be on a beach in Hawaii though.
No,
as their background.
I've never done that.
No,
yeah, because then I'd never do that. And I also never blur the background either. I don't like that either because then you're too in focus. And there's that cool effect.
And the person you're talking to is thinking, what are they hiding back there?
I know exactly.
Like, why would they?
Oh God, it's so funny. Zoom talk.
We have a great guest. I think we should get into it, right?
We have such a great guest. I feel like we're sort of tapping into a little bit of a new world with the daytime arena, like
but
90s.
Not just the daytime. I mean, you're talking the Springer show in the 90s, and now he's got his own show, Steve Wilkos, for 17 years. I'm excited now. I didn't know I wasn't really familiar with him a couple days ago, but the research I've done, he's amazing.
Incredible story. And he is in our waiting room. So why don't we bring him in? Steve Wilkos.
There he is.
Steve Wilkos.
What's up, buddy?
No.
The man, the myth, the legend. We were looking over your resume here, and I think you have the most diverse career life path of I mean, your story is so fascinating, and I'm sure you told it a few times before. I know our listeners would love to hear the beginning because you were in the military. Yes, and then a police officer.
After, my dad was a Korean War veteran. He was a paratrooper in the Korean War, and he was a Chicago police officer. And so when I was growing up, my dad was like a superhero to me, and I wanted to be like my dad. So after high school, I joined the Marines, and when I got out of the Marine Corps, I became a police officer just like my dad. So that was going to be my life, plan was be a Chicago policeman, get my 30-year pension and retire. And, I took a side job for one day working at the Springer show, and I've been there for almost 30 years now. I haven't left. So
you were just like a hire. They were just like, we need security for this day, random day.
They needed security for a show. I think it was a Ku Klux Klan show or something. And they hired some off-duty policemen. I happened to be one of them. And so I went there one day, and then the guy that was kind of running security, he called me back, and he knew that I would always say yes. I wasn't one of these guys that said, no, I can't do it today. I was always, I'll be there. And eventually he got fired, and I was there, and they said, hey, do you want to run security here? And I said, yeah. And so then I got to know Jerry a little bit. And then they asked me if I wanted to be there full time. I said yes. And then my role on the show kept growing a little bit, because the show took a different turn. It became, love triangles and things like that, where I started being on stage a lot more, and people started to know who I am. And the executive producer at the time was like, hey, why don't you shave your head? You know, you're going to be really going to stand out if you shave your head, which I had a Marine Corps haircut anyway, so it wasn't like I was shaving off Fabio type hair. So I did, and he was right. Like all of a sudden, the fan mail, that's back before email and stuff, and fan mails would start pouring in. And so I became kind of like the second banana on the Springer Show. And so it worked out really well for me.
Hold on. I want to get to all of that. I feel like we rushed through a lot of important stuff. First of all, thank you for being here. And I have to say that one of my favorite things about hosting this show is that sometimes the people that I don't know a lot about become the most interesting interviews. Just doing the research on you that our producer Lorraine put together. And I even watched one of your episodes today. Your life is extraordinary. And what was it like being a Marine for 7 years? Did you see like combat or no?
No, I was in from 82 to 89. So that was during the Cold War. Some of the guys that went to boot camp, unfortunately, lost their lives in Lebanon in the bombing of Beirut. But I didn't see action. I was fortunate. I got sent over to Japan, and some of those guys got sent over that way. But I love being in the Marines. And I wouldn't be here today without serving in the Marines because, you know, I was growing up, I was kind of hanging out with guys that I'm still friends with today, but we were kind of meatheads and fight and things like that. And nobody was going to college after high school, so it wasn't one of those type of things. Nobody in Chicago back then, no boys went to college. I mean, that's just the way it was. And so I went into the Marines and, you know, it gave me a great work ethic, discipline,
right?
Made me realize like I really need to straighten myself out. And I became a very good Marine, and I really enjoyed it. So I reenlisted actually. My first enlistment was for 3 years, and I reenlisted for 4 more. And at one point, I was going to make it a career, but I got out and I got on the police department about a year later. And I remember when I got out of the Marines, I was making $12,000 a year. And when I became a policeman, I was making $26,500 for starting pay. And I thought I was the richest dude in the world. And I got health benefits.
Yeah, health pension.
It doubled.
So I was
job.
like, and, you know, I had a basement apartment that cost me $450 a month. I had a Dodge Colt that was paid for. And so I had very low expenses. So like I said, and plus I just came out of the Marines, so I was super physically fit. You know, I felt like I was Superman. I had a badge and a gun. I could basically do whatever I wanted. And I was making $26,000. So I thought I was like, you know, the cat's meow.
But Chicago is not an easy place to be a police officer.
No.
I would think.
It wasn't. But, you know, like I said, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. And, you know, I fought a lot, you know, growing up in Chicago. I got a lot of fist fights. So that kind of like physical danger never really bothered me, or getting into a physical confrontation. And then all the training I got in the Marines and everything. So I liked the action. I mean, I was young and dumb, right? I thought I was, you know, Superman. Nothing could hurt me. So I never wore my bulletproof vest. My mom's like, oh, you make sure you wear it every day. And my dad's like, you're never going to wear that thing. And he was right. I never wore it. And because I didn't think anything could happen to me. And so I went out. I worked in bad districts the whole time I was on a job, because my dad said, don't go to a district where there's no crime, because you're never going to learn to be a policeman. He goes, you're going to be bored. The 8-hour shift's going to last forever. He goes, you go to a district where there's high crime. He goes, you're going to be busy all the time. You're going to learn how to be a policeman, and your 8-hour shift's going to go by fast. And he was right. Like, and I love catching the bad guy. When I was a policeman, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to catch the bad guy.
And your dad was, like you said, a superhero, and he wasn't, you know, he wanted you to learn those skills, right? I mean,
yeah, he was a larger than life guy, man. He was a big dude and very intimidating. And, you know, if it wasn't for him growing up in Chicago during that time, I did get in trouble, but I would have gotten a lot more trouble if it wasn't for him. So he was a good role model for me. And, you know, he goes, when you get on the job, there's going to be a lot of temptation, money and all this stuff. And He goes, if you don't take a dime, he goes, you never have to worry about anybody knocking on your door, which means like ID or coming to lock you up.
What do you mean? Like people offering you bribes and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So like, corrupt, right? It's everywhere.
Always, as simple as like a traffic stop. People, hey, officer, give you $20. Don't write
no way.
I would never try that. I just cried. I would cry.
Right. Christine gets out of it just for being Christine.
There was guys that did take the money, right? Like,
sure.
Not so much the young guys that I was coming on with, but I think the older guys, it was kind of ingrained. That was the way things were. But my dad said, hey, man, unless you can retire on it, don't take it. And
right.
So
what a lesson. What a great thing to hear so that you took that off the table. Was your dad able to see you make this transition into this next chapter of your career?
Yeah, my dad only passed away about 4 years ago. And to see, my dad's, his parents were right off the boat in Poland and they didn't have anything. I mean, his house, the building that he lived in was in my district. And I used to drive by and I go, man, I can't believe my dad grew up there. And so...
Why, was it a rough neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, it was really rough. I mean, I don't know what it was like in the 30s and 40s, but it certainly wasn't the better part of Chicago, that's for sure. But, so my dad, who came from nothing to see his son with the TV show, my dad was all about family and his name and, his reputation. So having his son, the Steve Wilkos Show, my dad, everywhere we went, it was like kind of embarrassing because my dad's like, oh, my son, he's just,
oh yeah, we've experienced that, right, Christy?
Yeah. So my dad was like, oh, my son from the Jerry Springer Show. And then when I got my own show, like my mom's still alive, and I always teased like they were my publicists down in Florida.
Exactly.
In Florida.
The car in their trunk was filled with Steve Wilkos shirts, and they pass them out to everybody. And,
holiday gifts, mugs, right? The merch.
My dad was really, he really loved that I got my own show.
That is phenomenal. So you were on the police force for how many years before this crazy moment in time?
Well, I came on the police force in 1990, and then I started on Jerry Springer in 1994, and I stayed with the police until 2001.
Oh,
so
you did both simultaneously?
Yeah, and then so my day started at 9 a.m. I worked at Springer from 9 to about 3:30. I'd race to my policeman job to work from 4 to midnight. And then I worked in the bars afterwards, security from midnight till 4 in the morning. So I had really long days, but I was hustling. And, I was like 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. I was making over $100,000 between the three jobs. So, from that 26,000 4 years later, I'm making over 100. I mean, I was like, Jeff Bezos, man. I was
But you're working from 9 in the morning until 4 in the morning?
But they were 4 great jobs.
Right. You didn't want to let any of them go.
I love that.
The show was fun. Being a cop, I love being a policeman. I love working in bars because at that time I was drinking and I'd hang out in bars. I was meeting girls and I was getting paid. So
it was you got to the nightlife, but getting paid to do it.
Meeting girls, catching bad guys, and being on TV all at the same time. I agree.
Yeah.
Did your fellow officers trash talk you a little bit for the TV job? Like, did you have to wash your makeup off before you showed up to the station?
I didn't wear makeup when I was security at Springer, but a lot. I brought a lot of guys in that were my friends. They worked security with me, and so they were very grateful for that. But the Springer Show was such a phenomenon that it was really hard to get tickets to. So all the cops and Steve, can I get tickets, and that kind of thing. So guys were, if they wanted to stay on my good side and get tickets, they weren't busting my balls too bad.
Yeah, tell us what that felt like when the show, because we think like that show was really the first of its kind that was true reality television, right? Like a totally different form of entertainment.
And listen, as I've been on the air now, my own show for 17 years, and people know who I am. But I don't have 1/10 of the stardom that Jerry had, right? Like Jerry was like Elvis Presley for about 5 years. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I'm not exaggerating. Mm-hmm. The dude was the most famous guy in the world at one time. And I was right next to him. So I was traveling everywhere with him, all over the country, get invited to go to Kentucky Derby, Billboard Awards. We were going to Amsterdam, London, doing MTV. I'm meeting everybody that I've ever saw on TV, or I'm big into sports, love baseball. I got to meet all my baseball heroes because of the Springer Show. And it was a crazy time of my life because here I'm a cop, but I'm like the most famous cop in America.
Right.
And on TV every day.
So I literally, I go with Jerry to we do publicity over in Europe because the show is very popular in Europe. Mm-hmm. And I'm staying in London in the fanciest hotels. I'm flying first class. I'm going to Amsterdam, and it's just having a wonderful time. And I'd literally get off the plane, change clothes, put my uniform on, and then I'd be working in the ghetto for the next 8 hours. Nobody was living the kind of life I was.
It's incredible.
Seriously, you need to write a book, or we need to make a biopic on you, because I've never heard any those kind of worlds all happening to someone at the same time.
Because I'd be writing with my partner when I got back. He's like, how was it? I'm like, man, we were in Amsterdam, and I remember we were in a restaurant, and there was just thousands of people out in the streets, and they're pounding on the window. We were like the Beatles. They had escorted the back door. We had to run our limousine, and people were shaking the limousine, and it was nuts, man. It was really crazy. The other cops that I was working with, telling them these stories, it just blew their minds that, I was part of this crazy hit show,
Because of that proximity and travel, and were you sort of his confidant, or you two, did you become very close friends, or was it?
We became very, very close friends, because I spent more time with him than I did anybody else.
I was going to say, right?
When we got done with the studio, we were on the road together, and we stayed at the same hotels. We'd go out to dinner. We'd do all the appearances together. And so, I became and we both passionate baseball fans. And so we'd be in cities and go to ball games and stuff. And all throughout the years, even when I left the show to do my show, and we stayed very close. And, I saw Jerry a month before he passed away, and, we were together, and he didn't share to me that he was dying, but I knew something was up, and I knew something was wrong. But it was funny because that last night we were together, we were guys that never talked about the old days, no glory days, none of that crap. We'd always talk about his grandson and my son because they're both baseball players, athletes, and stuff. So we would talk about his grandson, my son, and we would talk sports or politics. And that's the other thing. We're extreme opposites politically. I'm very conservative, he's very liberal. But Jerry's the kind of guy we could talk and talk. We never got mad at each other. The guy never got mad at me. And 30 years of knowing him, man, the guy never got mad at me, never got angry. I never got angry at it. I don't have any friends I can say I never got mad at you.
Right.
It was a really special relationship.
Beautiful. I'm sorry for your loss too, man. That must
he's a great dude. Because I'll tell you, man, you couldn't get a more gentle, caring, considerate, generous man I've ever met in my life. Or intelligent, by the way.
But yeah, I was going to say a shrewd businessman. In your opinion, what was it about the Springer Show that catapulted it into that sort of, stratosphere?
It's real simple. It was the fighting, man. Because,
that's it. People throwing fights, chairs.
Right? And, we had plenty of them. And it was just, and the other thing was, it was just crazy. So, you had good looking people. You had the Jerry beads, women taking their tops off. It just
right. There was a lot of bleeping out. I remember that. The
so
blacks
and then,
across the screen.
Then in segment 6 was always the questions from the audience, and they'd be ripping on the people on stage, and it was just this back and forth. It was just, there's never been a show like it, and there never will be again, because nowadays the stuff that we got away with then, we get canceled in 2 minutes today.
Right. We talk about that, because this is a 90s podcast, we talk about none of the things any of us were doing, the shows we were working on.
Right. But back then, this talk show host became a rock star with groupies and
he was on the cover of Rolling Stone, man.
No way. Was he really?
Yeah, he was on the cover of Rolling Stone. So it was just, when I look back at my life, those years were the most fun. Like now my life's really boring, right? Like I go do my show. But no, it's true. Like back then, I met my wife on the show. We got married. She was my executive producer. She was the exec producer at Springer after the previous guy got fired. And we lived downtown Chicago, a block away from Rush Street, which is where all the bars and restaurants. And so like I would go out and I was friends with, the athletes. I knew Michael Jordan. I knew everybody, and I was hanging out with everybody. And I was going out to the nightclubs and dinners. I didn't have to pay for anything, And
oh wow!
And I'm like, I'm appearing in movies and TV shows and doing Leno and Letterman, and so I was on the go constantly. I was hardly ever home. I was either working or just having a great time. And now my life is: I wake up, I golf, I come home, on a non-tape, or if I'm taping, I tape. I come home. I never go out anymore. So my life is really boring, like it's like I'm Ray Liotta at the end of Goodfellas where he's like a schnook, right? Like
eating spaghetti with ketchup.
Some suburb and his life is like, that's my life now. Like I'm a schnook now.
But at least you can say you did it all,
I did, man.
How it goes.
I had the and listen, I'm slowing down. I love being at home with my wife, and my daughter's in college now, but my son's still home. He's got one more year here. So, I enjoy being a homebody. I don't like going out because people are nice to me, but, you really don't have a lot of privacy. And I like Jerry loved being famous. He loved being out. I don't. I like, I don't want anybody to know who I am, And
you want to fly under the radar. Yeah.
When I was anonymous, if somebody gave me a hard time, I could punch them in the face and that'd be the end of it. I'd walk away. I can't do that anymore. No. I'm getting kind of old for that too, but you don't have any more anonymity. So, you got to watch everything you do.
In the Springer days, though, were there dangerous situations? I know you protected, like on the set, people would start getting crazy, right? But in real life or on the set, did you ever feel Jerry was in danger? Did you ever have to seriously step in on any situation?
Well, there was never traveling with him when I was his bodyguard. Nobody ever gave us a hard time. Now, one time a guy started pouring beer on Jerry at a Cubs game. I had season tickets at a Cubs game, and this jackass put his arm around Jerry to take a picture, and he started pouring beer down Jerry's.
Oh boy! And
I took the guy and I slammed him down to the ground, and I accidentally stepped on his face a couple times. But that
accidentally,
yeah. And but there was one time there was a guy who was very anti-Semitic, was just talking trash to Jerry. And, he probably never threw a punch in his life. I mean, no way. And the guy couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag he tried. This guy made comments about Jerry's parents or something. And this dude was a big dude on stage, right? He was bigger than me. And Jerry, couldn't take it anymore. He, charged at the guy. And I grabbed the guy so he didn't murder Jerry, because I thought this guy was to pound Jerry into the ground. So I grabbed the guy, and that was it. But that was only 2 times. But when people met Jerry, they all loved him. Nobody ever gave him a hard time. And all the 30 years I've been in TV, when I'm out in public, nobody's ever said, "Hey, Steve, you suck," or challenged me. Never.
I want to hear about the transition of you. You said you started to be on camera, right? And they had you shave your head. You sort of became a character. And was that did that just feel natural to you? I mean, you're not somebody who had been in front of the camera. You just could be you, but suddenly they loved it, right?
Well, it's so funny because when I was a cop and if I was at a crime scene and the news showed up, you'd be racing home to see the news, see yourself on news for 2 seconds, right?
Hysterical. No.
Oh, wow. I never thought of that.
Yeah. But then here I'm on a show where I'm on TV every day, but it happened in such small increments that I never felt uncomfortable, right? Because it happened teeny steps, right? So that, here, and plus, I didn't have to do anything, remember any lines. I just had to be myself,
Exactly.
And just do whatever. Like, because the Springer Show, there was no rules or anything. You did whatever you wanted. So that when, we started doing little things called Steve to the Rescue, where I went out, like we'd find guests and I'd go to their hometown and I'd help them out of a jam or, whatever. So like I got comfortable doing things, right? And then at the end of every show, I closed the show. We called it Steve's Corner, and then I'd walk with the guests. I'd do like a little interview with them at the end of the show when the credits are rolling. So I got to be creative. I like do little skits and just act goofy and have fun time. So I had a blast with it. So that when they did come to me and said, oh, and then the other thing was when Jerry went on Dancing with the Stars, they had me host the show. Well, then I was terrified. I'm like, oh shit, I got to host.
Okay. Oh, wow. Wow. So what year was that? What year was that?
Yeah. But I was really nervous, but I did it. And, the first couple times I did, I probably was terrible, man, just horrible. But, they had to have somebody host the show, and I was the guy. So they thought Jerry would be the first guy voted off Dancing with the Stars. He'd be back in a week. But he was out there for like 6 weeks. So I hosted. And back then, I think
the guy can dance too. Are you serious?
Not really. But
but he has such a fan base, and that show is about the fans. Right. So he kept getting. I remember it so well. He was so beloved.
Yeah. So we taped like 6 shows a week back then, and I think I did 5 or 6 weeks, so 36 shows. Well, those aired, and they rated really well. Well, the next year, I would do a lot of them. So we take Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Well, I would take Monday shows, and Jerry would take Monday off. He was happy. He got 1 extra day off, and I'd make a little more money when I hosted the show. And so that was 2006. And then in 2007, it was January, like real early in the year. And my kids were really small. They were only about 3, 4, and 2 or something like that. And 3 and 1 actually. And my wife was in bed, my kids were in bed. I was watching All in the Family, and I had like a little vodka tonic and having a drink. And I get a phone call from some executive NBC, and he's like, "This is Steve Wilkos." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Who's calling my house at like 10:30 at night?" He goes, "Oh, this is so and so, and we're giving you your own show." Well, I actually thought it was one of my friends screwing around with me,
Like,
so
getting punked, right?
A prank, yeah.
And he's like, anyway, this next fall, you're going to get your own show. So I remember I walked upstairs and told my wife, I said, "Hey, I got a call. I'm getting my own show." And she's like, "Are you drunk?" I'm like, "No." And so I got my own show. And then the terrifying aspect of realizing what was happening, then that really kicked in then.
I bet. It reminds me so much because I think back on so many shows where that were so beloved, like Letterman always had Biff, who would do, remember there was always a character that was just, a regular person, but had something, and they would lean into it. I feel like on Howard Stern, like his driver Ronnie, right?
Yeah.
Ronnie,
right. Or Jimmy Kimmel has his cousin Guillermo.
His cousin Guillermo, exactly. Yeah. And I feel like
except those guys aren't going to get their own shows.
No, but that's what I'm saying is you were the first, like you sort of started this template of right. and then you get your own show, and it has been on for 17 years.
Yeah, it's I'm very fortunate because, there's so many times I said, man, I could be pushing a squad car right now. I mean, I'd be retired from the police department now, so I'm still working. So my friends, they're like, I go, "Hey, man, I'm paying for all you guys' Social Security. I'm still out there working." And they're like, "We'll switch places at any time, man."
In a heartbeat.
I watched the most recent episode that I could find on YouTube. And first of all, you remind me like a little, like you're more of a cross between Jerry and like a Dr. Phil. You seem very legit. And these people, that it was so dramatic. There was a child that was being molested, and no one could figure out whether it was the mother, the boyfriend, or the husband. And CPS had taken the child away from all of them. And your job was to figure out with paternity tests, first of all, who was the father,
right?
A lie detector test to see who was abusing the child. They all claimed it wasn't them. It was like, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea you did storylines that intense. I had no idea.
So when we got the show, it was like, okay, you're getting a show. You figure out what you're going to do. It was like Jerry Seinfeld when you watch old Seinfeld episodes and he goes to NBC and it's like, what's the show about? Oh, the show's about nothing. Well, you got to figure out what we're going to do. And my wife really came up with the concept. She said, hey, because everybody thought we were just going to be an extension of the Jerry Springer Show. Well, that's the quickest way to get canceled is try to. So she said, listen, you're a policeman, and you're a good policeman. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the policeman from the streets of Chicago and we're going to put him on stage. And the stories and the things that you do as a policeman, those are the stories that we're going to do on stage. So any crime that's being committed in the streets, we cover it on the show. Now, she knows that to give me lighter stories sometimes, and we'll do cheating and we'll do DNA because I just can't do the heavy stuff all the time.
I was going to say the episode I saw, which I just coincidentally after we knew we were going to have you on, which we were so excited, and then I just saw you on my DVR. I quickly put it on, and I was like, okay, because with syndication, you never know. Like, is it on in the morning in New York? Is it on the afternoon? And I found, and the episode that I watched was it was a more lighthearted, it was a DNA, and it was a stoner guy, and he was a real character, and he was very funny and very lovable, and, he was denying that it was his child. So, but I had no idea you really go into like full detective mode.
Remember, we did a show where I got a guy confess to a murder. It must have been season 2 or season 3. I mean, I broke
on your show?
On my show. And
did they arrest him?
Oh my God.
He went back, he got arrested. And, we've had people that, a lot of them, they won't confess. And we get the lie detector results. And there's been a lot of court cases that have used our show and judges have watched the show and stuff like that. But people have gone to prison because of our show. So, I mean, we have got the truth out of some people.
Is it really difficult when you have sort of one side of one half of this, whether it's someone who's the accuser, or is it hard to get all of the people involved to come on the show, or is it do people just want to be on TV?
I ask my wife that question all the time. Like, we had a guy the other day, we did a show, and he was accused of murdering his own brother. Right? The mother came on because she thought her one son killed the other son. Okay? We just taped that this week. And I asked my wife, how the hell do we get these people on the show? Like, if I was accused of murder, I ain't going on a talk show and talking about it and like taking a lie detector
right
test.
To a professional police officer who's going to interrogate you and maybe get you to confess.
And so I'm always amazed, like, how do you get these people to come on?
They want their 5 minutes, man. It's powerful.
I think with other shows that can be the case. I don't think that's the case with ours. I do believe, and I'm not just saying that to pat myself on the back or I show. I think when people are in the legal system, they're waiting a long time for answers, right? They're waiting a long time for justice. You could be in a court system for years. Where people come on my show and they take that lie detector test or I crack them down, and they got answers, and they don't have to wait 2 years,
That's really
well. If you're not the guilty one, yeah. But how?
Yeah, but if you're the guilty one,
yeah. Why would you
listen, man? We've blown guys out of the water, and women too. We've blown a lot of people out of the water because they've been found. They failed a lie detector test. But even things like, people stealing from their roommate or their mother, stealing money and jewelry and. It's sad, but like people want to know, like, hey, did this person steal my rent money for the month? And people want answers.
Do you have a very specific? Obviously, it's reality. It's not like scripted, but do you give some of your guests ahead of time what you're going to be asking, or do you really do it cold? Like, do you give them a heads up on the sort of format and what's going to be expected of them?
Coming on the show kind of has an idea. I don't think anybody's ever been on a show and says, "Oh, I didn't know what I was getting into."
Right.
I personally don't know what they don't know because I don't go to work knowing what the stories are that day. And, my wife's the executive producer. She doesn't say a word to me. And I never know the results before ahead of time. And I would say 98% of the time, I can figure out what the lie detector results are going to be just by talking to the people. I know if they're guilty. Like, listen, there's things you do as a policeman. Have somebody tell a story, have them tell it again. You know when somebody's lying. So most of the time I get it right. But there's a few times where I'm thinking, okay, this person's going to fail and they pass. And there's a few times when I think that they're going to pass and they fail. So, but, I go into a show, I know absolutely nothing.
But do you still sometimes get shocked by what you're seeing, or you've seen it all?
Yeah, you think you see it all, and then you live another day, and then you realize, what's going on in the world. I mean, you just, you're always amazed. I mean, it's crazy.
Right.
Well, it makes sense when you said your life is very simple now. What you're dealing with when you're going in and taping, and this, like, it's a lot coming at you. So
my job's been dealing with drama for the last 30 some years between Policeman and Springer Show, my show, and so I don't want drama. And I'm telling you, man, if you cause any drama, you're out of my life, man. Simple as that. I don't care who you are. You could be a sibling, a parent. I don't care, man. If you're causing drama, you cause me any kind of heartache, you're out, man. I want quiet.
You want peace. Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I have to deal with drama is with my kids. And I got good kids, but kids can be a pain in the ass.
I was just going to say,
I have to deal with. I'm not helping kids out, so I got to deal with that. But everybody else, no way.
And also, they're probably not as afraid of you as people on
the
show are. No respect.
Until I think, honestly, until 3 years ago, I don't think my kids ever had a concept of what I do for a living. Like my son, he was always, Dad, everybody knows you. Everybody knows you. And I'm like, they don't know me. They just, because of my job. But like, I don't think he liked it because he's played sports. He plays football, baseball. So I show up at his games and everything. Steve Wilkos is your dad. So I don't think my son liked that. But then when we go to the Super Bowl and he gets to meet Jim Kelly and he's standing on the field, all those things.
Now he likes it.
He doesn't like it, So my wife, my daughter, same thing. Like we go to LA, she's getting to meet all her favorite people on TV. And so, yeah, there's perks for them as well as me.
Absolutely. I will say to my husband that, because having David and I, my daughter's now 21, but the teenage years, it was like the greatest gift of going to the Taylor Swift concert or going to see Hamilton and getting to meet one of the cast members backstage, these incredible moments that you have access to and then get home and she'd scream at him for not knowing, that's my teacher. How dare you not know who that is? I've talked about that person like in an instant.
Right.
It turns on a dime. Very unimpressed.
Well, like my daughter's up in Boston. She goes to Northeastern, and there's the one Theo Von, the comedian, and she's a huge fan of his. Right, so she goes, Dad, he's going to be here performing. Will you come up and go to the show with me? It's only a couple-hour drive up from where I live. So I said, yeah, I'll come up. I'll spend the night. So I had my publicist contact his guy and said, hey, my daughter, big fan. She'd like to meet you. So, of course, after the show, it's only me and my daughter. We go back, we meet him. He's wonderful to my daughter. She's mind's blown that she's, in the room. And he gave her a nice, package of stuff. And so she got her mind blown, But like if I was Steve the cop, that ain't happening. But because I'm Steve on TV, that stuff happens.
Steve on TV. And they'll milk you for every bit of it, right?
Well, they milk me along.
Well, I think once they're college age, they start to understand and respect your career and your life choices, and you as a father. When they're 13 or 14,
they don't get it.
God help
they
all
don't.
of us. Yeah.
Right. It's so true. And I do find, it sounds like you have that relation. I just think it's actually so sweet too that you have a daughter saying, hey, will you come and go with me? And whether it's because you're Steve, the cop, or Steve on TV.
She didn't know that I was going to do that for her.
Yeah.
So she just wanted me to, because she knows my wife wouldn't be into that type of thing. And
right.
So she wanted, me and my daughter, we have a really kind of crazy sense of humor. So she thought that I would enjoy it. But like the other thing is my kids too, like they grew up in this bubble, right? Like, we live in a nice house. We have a lake house and we're traveling all over the place. And now my daughter's kind of like, now she's making like $6 an hour or whatever it is, working for some congressman up in Massachusetts. And she's like, I go, yeah. I go, I wasn't making millions of dollars when I was your age. Like, I lived in a basement apartment. I drove that Dodge Colt. You know what I mean? Like, this is real life. What you were living in for the past 18 years, that's not real life. Most people don't live like that.
Isn't it so nice when your kids get to that age and you can have those talks? Like, I've been dying for 10 years to tell you what I've gone through for you. And now
I told my kids probably for the last 5 years, I said, take a look around the way you're living, right? Like the house that you're growing up in, the other house you can go to the lake that has boats and jet skis and all that. When we fly places, when we're going, we don't have to wait in line for anything, all that. I go, you're not going to live like that as adults unless you really, really bust your ass. I go, so the best part of your financial life, living like a king, that's all going to end someday. I'm still going to be living it. You probably won't, unless you really go out and do what me and your mother did.
It's good advice.
Really good advice.
I have one more question. Because the episode that I watched, because we were talking about that things aren't coerced or planned, but the boyfriend was like released from backstage and came and attacked the other husband or whoever it was. But like, I know on Springer, there was all these fights. Are you saying though that like the producers didn't coerce that or didn't know that these guys were going to start?
I mean, look at the sub and like, listen, even the Springer, I'm only going to speak to when I was there. But when people would say those fights are fake or this or that, if somebody's sleeping with your wife and you bring them there, that dude comes out and gives your wife a kiss right on stage. There's not a whole lot we got to do to get that guy to start swinging on the other guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's just cheating. We got stories where somebody hurt your kid or, doing something like that. So we don't, and you see, like, we got good security. We don't allow people to fight. Like on Springer, man, we'd let them fight for a little bit, right? Like, let the guy get his licks in, this and that. We don't do that on our show because it's real serious topics. So, but no, we're not encouraging anybody to fight. And I say it all the time. You're not going to fight. We had two guys want to go out yesterday. I said, no, you're not going to fight. Knock that off because that's not what we're here for. We're not for that. So, but yeah.
But you're ready for it.
Oh, we have to be ready for it because someone could really get hurt.
And is it your buddies? Do you have a good crew? You have your own good security
Yeah, do you have a guy that's going to get his own show now? You pay it forward?
So the head of my security is Mike McDermott, who we were policemen in the 14th district 30 years ago, even longer, 33 years ago. And he was the guy who asked me to work the Springer show. I was walking out of the police station at 1:00 in the morning. He said, hey, we need another guy tomorrow. And so Mike has stayed with me. We were on Springer together. When I got my own show, we named him head of security of my show. He's a retired policeman now. And he lives in Florida, but we fly him in every week to run security for my show. So he's a guy that I have a very close personal relationship. All the other security guys are guys that we've hired since we've been in Connecticut.
Do you do, because that two things, because you shoot in Connecticut, do you do like a bunch of episodes in one day and then, or are you doing
we take Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Like I just got done taping yesterday. So I think on Tuesday we taped 6 stories and yesterday we taped 5. So we did 11 stories this week.
Wow. That is a lot.
6 episodes in one day?
But the good thing is I'm only working 2 days a week.
Exactly.
I'd rather work 2 days a week than 3 days a week or 4 days a week. So I don't like now my wife, she's working 5 days a week because, she's putting the shows together. She's got to deal with legal and everything else. Mm-hmm. She's in charge of everything. So she works a lot. I really literally go in, I do the show, I leave, and I'm done. And like once in a while I have to do an interview like this. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I get a lot of time off and then we'll get done taping in March and I won't come back until August. So I'm off all summer. And so that's pretty good work.
Get a lot of tea times, a lot of tea.
I play golf every day except Monday.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And do you still get your police pension? I mean, not that it matters to you, but you deserve it.
Well, so here's the deal. I had over 10 years, so I could have invested it and I could have drew a pension, but I didn't do 20, so I would have got a small pension. But if you collect a municipal pension from anywhere in the United States, you get penalized on Social Security. So like my dad, he worked all these extra quarters to get Social Security and his pension. Well, like in 1988 or something, they changed the law. So if you're getting a municipal pension, you get deducted from Social Security. Well, I pay the max in Social Security, so I don't want to get deducted.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
So my pension would have been very, very small, and I would have got penalized on Social Security. So I said, nah. I pulled my pension, I reinvested, and I'll get Social Security someday if it's still around.
This has been fascinating.
This was such a treat to talk to you, and your story is really it's an epic life that you're still in the right in the heart of. And congratulations on all of it. It was really, really wonderful meeting you and talking to you.
Yeah, it was fun. I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, we will.
Good luck with everything.
I subscribe to your show, by the way, on YouTube. I'm like now I'm a fan, a lifelong fan.
That's the other thing, because TV, back when TV, like even 10 years ago, you didn't have all these digital platforms like Facebook and YouTube and Nosy. So that's another revenue that helps TV, because TV is like the horse buggy, right? It's going out of style. And, with these digital platforms, that brings a whole new revenue stream into the shows, which really helps because, when people are watching on YouTube and Facebook and all these other digital, that brings more money, because I don't think TV shows can survive anymore just from airing on TV, because, revenues are down. Listen, anybody under the age of 20, they're not watching TV.
Right. I was going to say, if you want a
right.
younger audience, you better be on digital somewhere.
Yes.
YouTube.
Yeah,
yes.
because, they're all watching their phones. My kids, my son especially, the only time he comes downstairs and watches on TV, sports.
Right. I was just going to say,
he's not watching TV shows or anything like that.
The last stand of linear TV is live sports.
Sports.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Although I got to say, YouTube bought the NFL package.
I know.
Amazon streams Thursday Night Football. You have to go on Prime Video to watch the game tonight.
I had Amazon Prime, and I'm a big Bears fan, big Chicago guy, so I had to buy the YouTube package to watch the Bears,
I canceled my DirecTV, and I finally switched to YouTube TV. My wife is so angry. She's trying to figure it out, but I hear it's great, that we will figure it out.
Yeah.
Such a treat. Really wonderful meeting you.
Nice
Thank you, Steve.
You
Steve Wilkos, thank you so much, buddy.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
I mean, really amazing life this guy has lived and is living, right?
It's really, really fascinating. And of course, would always catch those Jerry Springer episodes. And I was not like a Jerry Springer fan, but you couldn't not know what was going on. And it was so extreme. And like I said to him, like when we had talked about bringing him on the show, Steve, I caught that episode and he's such an interesting guy, and the way he navigates it, and then reading more about his story and his background. And then for you, when you just talked about the episode, I had no idea they did dark stuff.
It was
criminal.
Wow. But I kept thinking that sliding doors thing, his buddy who was a cop said, we need a security guard. What if he had said no to that? Or when Jerry said, I got to go do Dancing with the Stars. Can you host for me? What if he said, nah,
I can't do that.
I don't do that. What if he said no to those things? The guy just jumped into opportunities, and he's benefited from it, and he served his country. He served his city. I love him.
And how honest he was about who he was growing up. Like he said, did he say we were a bunch of meatheads? But
he's a fighter.
They fought. And it was really the military that got him disciplined and focused. And what a cool guy! What a cool guy!
Honestly, again, one of my favorites was someone that I really didn't know much about, and that's why I love this. So
yes. All right. Well, tune in next week. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Have a great week, everybody. And you too, Christine.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe and give us 5 stars.
And please follow us on Instagram at HeyDude, the 90s Called. See you next time.